Welcome, everybody, to New York State Empire State Chapter meeting. Tonight, we have a very special guest named Ed Kostakis. He is from Xizmo Media and AeroSpect. Very interesting gentleman, and his career in New York is quite something else. He will be talking to us momentarily, and we're really glad to have him. So I want to welcome Ed Kostakis. He is really a pioneering figure in the drone industry. He's the CEO and co-founder of Xizmo Media, which is a drone cinematography service, and AeroSpect, which is a drone facade inspection service. With a career marked by innovation and dedication, Ed has significantly shaped the landscape of using drones for cinema and engineering, especially in New York. And that's a tough place to fly. He'll speak about that in a few minutes. He's accumulated thousands of hours over decades in drone operations. Ed has become an authority on set piloting, live television broadcasts, feature films, commercials, and for building inspections. He has played a pivotal role in the development of custom equipment tailored for film productions and building inspections, leaving an incredible mark both domestically and internationally. His works featured in publications like the New York Times, Popular Mechanics, the National Herald, Chaplanik, ABC News for his contributions in the field. Ed's commitment to safety is evident in having trained multiple police departments around the country in emergency drone deployment and has collaborated with the National Transportation Safety Board and the FAA, where he has shared valuable knowledge and experience for drone-related accidents and investigations. So I am going to turn this over to Ed. Ed's going to start talking about how he got to this place, okay, in his life. And then we've got a few questions that we'd like to ask. And please, Ed, take it away.
Sure thing. Thank you so much for that intro, Jonathan, and thank you all so much for being here. It's really an honor and a pleasure. So my journey in the drone industry didn't even start with drones. It actually started with film and television. I went to Queens College with my business partner. Back then, best friend, still till this day, best friend, closer to a brother now, and still business partner, Pablo Barrera. I signed up for a course I had no business being in. It was an advanced course that required prereqs, and the head of the department would not let me into the. It was one of the last classes that were available. And the head of the department was like, look, you don't have any of these prereqs. I signed up too late. All the other classes were taken. I needed something to work towards my major, which was an advanced course in video production. So I managed to convince them to let me into that course. They finally did. And they're like, look, if you fail, you still have to pay. This is still on you. So no problem. So I go out. I understood how to use a camcorder, but I had no idea how to do any editing whatsoever. So we get assigned our first project. I walk into the editing bay at Queens College. There was this gentleman sitting there. We were the only two in there. And he happened to be in my class that I was in. I told him, look, I already shot everything I needed to shoot. I kind of just, do you have any idea how I could get the footage from the camcorder into the computer? How do I do this? How do I do this? He's like, dude, are you crazy? Like you're in an advanced class. How do you not know how to do that? I was like, dude, like I forgot. Like just give me a hand here with this, please. Just for a second. Everything else is fine. I know how to do everything else. I just forgot. He's like, okay, fine. So he slides everything over and he sets everything up on a timeline for me. Very, very generous. And I get to that point. I thought I'd be able to figure it out. And of course I could not. So I had to poke him again, be like, hey, dude, like, I'm really sorry. Like, oh, this is just embarrassing. Could you just help me slice? It's only like 30 seconds. Just help me slice this up. Took a little back and forth, but eventually he agreed to help me out. And while he was doing that, I put on the headphones that from the workstation that he was working at. And I was listening to it. I was like, oh, dude, this is absolute crap. Like, who wrote this? Like, okay, yeah, like you shot it and you were able to edit it, but who wrote it? You got a problem here with this. So I was like, I'll tell you what, being that we're in the same class together, I'll help you write. You'll help me shoot and edit. And I think we got something good going on here. Like, I think we can make this work. I think this is gonna be good. Of course, I had a lot more to gain from it than he did, but I managed to convince him, and thank goodness, because today he is my business partner, Pablo Barrera. Thank goodness he gave me a chance in being able to sort of, figure things out for the both of us, along the way. But that's how I met Pablo, my business partner. How did we get into the drone space? So Pablo and I, as I told you, we became really good friends through college. And one of the things that we ended up doing during Thanksgiving and Christmas is we would go volunteer down at the Bowery Mission. At the time, I was reserve in the Marine Corps, and so we'd go down there. We'd help hand out food and clothing and stuff. But I was also able to leverage my position in the Marine Corps to get them to give me some gifts from the Toys for Tots program. And if you guys are familiar with the area down at Floyd Bennett Field, like 6th Com Battalion, that's where I was enlisted as a data networking Marine. So we'd go out into the field and just build networks out of nowhere to support ongoing operations and training activities here stateside. So I got all these toys, would go down there, and we became pretty popular over there because it'd be Pablo and myself. I'd go down there in my Marine Corps uniform, and we'd hand out all these toys to these children that would come by. And we did that over a number of years. And there was this one gentleman who we became very good friends with, who was volunteering there as well. And I think he eventually ended up working there at some point. He was starting this non-for-profit and needed a picture of the torch of the Statue of Liberty to be the symbol of this non-for-profit organization that he wanted to use to help children learn computers and engineering and all this stuff in third world countries. And over the time, he knew that Pablo and I were good friends, and we went to Queens College and went to school for video production and media and movie making. And he tells us a story about how he had to get the picture, and he said he only had 2 options to go with. He could either rent a helicopter with a photographer, something very much like Jonathan Atkin does, or he found this one company out in New Jersey that had a small remote control helicopter with a camera attached that was able to take the picture. And after he told us this story, he points him and he goes, "You guys need to get into this. You guys need to do this. This is the future. This is now. This is going to be everything." There came a point in my life where I was like, okay, all things happen for a reason. But then I said, some things happen for a reason. Us being there that day and that man telling us that story and that way that he did it really did affect me. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll take that into consideration. Absolutely. This is back in like 2007, 2008. So about a month goes by and I start researching what is available, what's out there, what's a drone, what's this multi-copter, multi-rotor, this is way before like DJI time. So I looked into it and I called my business partners at the time and I said, I need $1,000 from each of you. And $1,000 at the time for us, we were in college. That might as well be $50,000. Like, we don't have money like that. Like, we didn't grow up we grew up in a low income families, generally, we're middle class. And so that was a lot of money for us. We really couldn't do that. But we managed to scrounge up the money, and I found this one gentleman out in Kansas who was selling an octocopter made by Microcopter back in the day. And if you guys are familiar with that, that was just all sorts of exposed circuitry and ESCs and wires, and it was very, very rudimentary as it gets. So we managed to get our hands on that. We brought it back. I had no idea what I was doing. Neither Pablo. We read as much as we possibly could. Back then, all we had were forums. It was just, everything was in German because it was a microcopter. So I didn't speak German. We had to figure out the forums, translate everything. be able to get in there and talk to everybody else who had it, and they all seemed to be having the same problems we had. And one thing was getting it to fly right, another thing was getting it to balance the camera right and to do what it needed to do for what we wanted to do. And we had set up our company Xizmo Media at the time just to do like general photography and cinematography groundwork, and we always knew that the drone was going to play a huge part in it, so we absolutely had to incorporate that in what we were doing. We figured it out. We flew, we crashed, we repaired, we figured out how to program, we figured out what PIDs meant, we figured out how GPS works, and we sort of ended up having to become our own engineers in all of this, because the only support we had was what we saw in the forums and what people had to say, which is great, because it was like we had to learn it the hard way, and doing it that way taught us a lot of things like that I didn't understand about batteries, about ESCs, about motors, about programming, about tuning, things that just electrical engineering that today till now I can now apply to other things that we make and we use on set, whether it be for drone or down on the ground. So that was back in 2008, 2009, and we sort of just ran with it. And to this day, that's what people have become. That's what people have known us for. Our efforts in advocating for drone use, not only in New York City, but generally in New York, goes back quite a ways too. As a matter of fact, that's exactly how I met one of your members here. Scott was at the North Hempstead or the Hempstead?
Yeah, it was Hempstead. Yeah, it was
Hempstead, right? They were introducing a drone ban, and this is back when we were still, very in our infant stages in our company. But they tried to introduce a bill that would essentially ban drones, even if you had one. You didn't have to be flying one. Even if you had one, you'd be found guilty of wanting to, it was very preemptive. You'd be found guilty of wanting to fly it. And they gave authority even to the to police and to the gentleman that would come around to collect the garbage to write you a ticket to do such a thing. So Scott, myself, and a couple of other guys went down there, and we tried to educate the council members there, the head of the town, and it was obvious that their decision had already been made way before we even got there, and it wouldn't matter what we were going to say. But we said it anyway, and we said it quite loudly. Some of us got thrown out. we couldn't believe what we were hearing and what was transpiring, but they ended up passing that, and that became right. They ended up passing that, right, Scott? That became a thing.
They ended up passing it. I'll give you a quick update. I think it's not enforced at all these days. It may still technically be on the books, but they changed over and all that. But yeah.
Okay.
My side is then I walked out of there and I was like, I like this guy. And so
yeah, it became very aggressive. Anyway, so a few years went by, and progressively started to get better at what we were doing, understanding the mechanics and the machinery and being able to fly and down. And at the time, the simulators were very simple to what we have today. Like, they were just not as involved as what we have today. But they were around, and so we were able to use that. So I was able to get a lot of experience before we put one of these larger octocopters up in the sky. At the time, that was considered like a heavy lift, lifting a 5D, a Canon 5D, a DSLR camera. Now, when we look at heavy lift, we're looking at something in the area of 30, 40 pounds, which is easily 10, 15, 20 times the weight of that DSLR camera. But to this day, I'm glad we went through that. I'm glad it wasn't so open and so easy to get into, because at the time, the only way to get into it was by getting your hands dirty in everything that was involved in it. Like, I'm talking about from understanding how props work, to how a motor spins, to the cabling, to what is positive, negative signal, how does PID tuning work? Because now when I see a drone and it has problems, I could just diagnose it right from the air. It doesn't have to come down. I don't need to connect it to anything. It was just a very old school way of being involved with your equipment and understanding how it all works. So anyway, so a few years went by and DJI opened up their office in New York City, and they were looking for a senior pilot, or they were looking for a pilot, just someone to be able to go around the country and demonstrate a lot of their gear, not only the stuff that was existing, but also for new stuff that they were going to be putting out, especially for police departments and a couple of the other municipalities that were getting involved with it as well. So I got the job with them, and I was with them for about 5 years, and I was able to tour the country and showing different police departments and fire departments how an M200 works or how an M100 works and stuff. And I was able to gain a lot of experience and knowledge from those gentlemen and the stuff that is required for them to do their job right. And being able to translate all of the things that I had learned to the guys over at R&D for DJI as well, so we could start to implement what their biggest problems are, what their concerns are. So I was involved quite a bit in that as well. That's what allowed for me to get next to a couple of the guys that were working at DJI that were working on the policy side, right? So even before the 1940s aviation law was implemented, like I mean, that's one thing, but moving a little bit forward here, I don't know if you guys remember, Daniel Garodnick was trying to implement an entire drone ban in New York City as well, like the one that Scott and I were fighting against out in Long Island. That was a few years ago. We were able to catch his ear because he was looking to put a total ban on that as well. We were able to catch his ear, and along with some of the staff at Vaughn College and DJI and Scott, we were able to get Daniel Garodnick out into a field, out into the CV Rotary Wings Club, that UAV field down there, and to teach him about, hey, look, drones do this, drones do that. This is going to be an important thing. Maybe you really should reconsider what it is that you're looking to do. And if you're not, then maybe we can this should be open to more of a discussion. I don't think you're really. It was clear that he had he needed more education and intel about what role drones are going to be playing in the very, very near future. And he did not want to be the guy to push the button saying, nope, that's just not something for anyone or everyone, and that's going to be the end of it. So thank goodness we were able to get him to kind of walk back a little bit on what his policy was going to be for that. I'll talk now a little bit about what how we decided to take the city to court regarding the aviation law. So I'm sure a lot of you understand what the aviation law was. It's something that was written back in the 1940s that was meant to prevent military members that had just come back from World War II from taking off in places like New Jersey or out on Long Island, Connecticut, wherever they were coming from, and landing in undeveloped parts of Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens. The guys would just land their biplanes and walk into a bar, have a couple of drinks, and get out and take off and fly off, right? That was, I could see why you would want a law to prevent that sort of stuff back in the 40s. That makes sense. But when you fast forward and try to apply it to drones in the 2000s, that doesn't really make so much sense. We had spoken with as many council members that would listen. At the time, we spoke to the then Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams, a couple of other ones as well. And we had meetings with them, and we'd gone on to Zoom meetings with them as well. And just before the pandemic, the then Brooklyn Borough President, Eric Adams, had introduced an idea to start using drones for facade inspection after Erica Tishman had been struck by a fallen piece of debris in Times Square in the middle of the day, and she unfortunately died from that. And it was clear to him at that moment that the facade inspections are a big thing that the city just does not have enough people working on. It just takes too long. That we need to accelerate this process, and that drones were an elegant solution to all of this. So I think it was in December of 2020. He held a meeting outside of City Hall saying that he was going to be introducing a bill. I was at that as well. I think, Scott, maybe you were at that as well, and I can't remember. Pablo was at that as well. There were a couple of us, and so we were there with DJI and the equipment, and we were talking about the role that drones will play regarding facade inspections and how quickly we'd be able to do it, how it would save the property owners and the project managers money and thus incentivizing the repairs, because the biggest problem in New York City right now is, okay, yeah, they're not only are they backlogging on the facade inspections, but after they've spent tens of thousands and sometimes even millions, depending on what sort of building we're talking about, they've spent that money just to find out that they have to spend another huge chunk of money. And it becomes now a matter of business just to pay the fines for not having brought your building up to code instead of just bringing your building up to code. And obviously this is a problem and something that we feel that drones could play a large part in. Unfortunately, after that press moment that he had out in front of City Hall, COVID hit, and obviously the city had bigger fish to fry. So that kind of sat on the back burner and that never really got revisited. Having worked and having been around this industry for as long as we have, we've realized that calling council members, getting on the phone with them, going to these meetings, means absolutely nothing. While I was working at DJI, and I wish that wasn't the case, but from experience, that's just what I have seen, especially with situations like this. Yes, if you're looking to, get some new garbage cans installed in your neighborhood because there just aren't enough, maybe that'll do it. But when you're trying to overturn a big situation like this, what we realize is that it just doesn't. There are just too many lobbyists in place. There's just too much money behind it. They may make it look like there would be a hope if you sat and you called and you try to get in contact with these people that are in power to make these changes. But unfortunately, in our experience, that is not the case. During COVID, we sat down with Eric Adams' people and a couple of other council members, and it was like, yes, we understand this is something that needs to be done, but nothing had happened. And in all the years that I was working at DJI, their policy guys, they were lobbying up in Albany to try to get this thing overturned, and they were trying to do it the diplomatic way. Of course, I understand when you're a Chinese company, you're walking on eggshells, especially when you're trying to influence policy in the United States, and you're like the biggest company. Like, of course, you have a lot to gain, so everyone's going to sit back and say, no way, you're the biggest one to gain from this. But no, it's a matter of the entire industry. It's not just them. So yes, of course, so they have a lot to gain, but there's bigger things at play here. After I realized that it wasn't just DJI, it was all the manufacturers that were trying to get this overturned, and they were all part of like this group that would lobby in Albany, and I can't imagine how much time and money they spent up there, but nothing was changed. Nothing got changed. And it turns out anger is a very, very good motivator. We were absolutely upset that no one would listen. No, I mean, the people would listen, but nothing, they heard us, but they weren't listening. Nothing would get done. Promises went unfulfilled. And it came to the point where it's like, okay, well, this is our only shot. Is to take the city to court. And we really didn't want to have to do that because that was going to take a lot of money and a lot of time. And I would rather not have to do that. But we also realized that the money we lose if we don't would have been 50 times the amount if we did. So we figured, let's just roll the dice here and let's see what happens. I don't know if any of you have ever sued the city before, but good luck finding a lawyer who will even entertain your call to begin with, because I got hung up on at least 40 times before I found a lawyer that would end up taking the case. And so we presented it to them, and they're like, you sure you guys want to do this? Because this is going to be quite difficult. It's like, look, all the evidence and everything you're going to need, I'm going to hand it to you. Everything, like, I just need you to start, filing this. And by the way, a great law firm, Muchmore and Associates. They're the ones that gave us a hand with this, Andrew Muchmore and Garrett Cusack. If it weren't for them, we also would not be here. And that took quite a bit of convincing to Pablo as well, because like we balance each other out. Like the story I told you before, we balance each other out. Like he'll come up with an idea, bounce it off me. I come up with an idea, bounce it off him. This is absolutely a team effort. And it just so happened to be that all of the stars aligned just right to get this done. So we sued them under the First Amendment right to be able to use drones for this. And fast forwarding here a little bit, just because I'm not sure how much more time I got here. The city decided to, once the lawsuit was over, which was just a few months ago, where we won the lawsuit, they initially tried to dismiss the lawsuit, saying that drones are dangerous, citing privacy concerns, saying there's just too much air traffic, we cannot allow for this. Is that they were so against it, and to this day they still are. And it was just super interesting to see that once we finally won and it became public, they're like, oh, we're embracing this technology. The mayor, Eric Adams, is pushing this forward. He wants to use this. That's not at all how it happened. And the way it's termed and phrased in all the media is it's sad, really, but I get it. We can't control all of that. They're going to do what they need to do. However, if it wasn't for that lawsuit, the permitting process and the availability and a drone economy would honestly not even be part of New York City, which is sad because we're supposed to be one of the most forward-thinking cities in the world, one of the most technologically advanced thinking cities in the world. And here we are just shaking our head at one of the greatest things since the internet. And it's like, why are you doing that? And it was clear to us during the trial, during while we were going back and forth with the judge and with the defense and with their attorney, with the city's defense attorney, of course, that they just did not want this at all. And it was at that point that I realized that all the lobbying in the world and all the money in the world would have done absolutely zero. It would have done zero. And a lot of people sit back and they say, oh, Eddie, how could you agree to the terms that the city put forth and this and that? Again, for those of you who have never sued the city before, you are a guest in their casino. They know exactly how much money you have. They are the chair. They are the dealer. They are the cards. They are the camera. They are the judge. They are the bench. They are everything. You have to be crazy to want to sue the city. You do. And quite honestly, that's really where we were at that point, where we knew that, I mean, this is the only thing that no one has tried. Let's give this a shot. So thankfully, it worked out. It did work out. But what we did realize is that, or at least it felt like it was extremely biased because, like I said, a lot of people say, oh, Eddie, how could you have agreed to those terms and moving forward? It's like, there's nothing we can do to get this to work. That was the only thing that we could have agreed on. Like they were not budging on anything. I mean, we would meet with the judge once every 2-3 months. And if we were not going to comply with what the city wanted to put forth, this was not moving anywhere. This was not going anywhere. It came to the point where we met with the judge and she was like, oh, I'm so happy to see that progress has been made. I'm like, no progress has been made. It's only been us saying, okay, like succumbing to what the city wants, and they have not granted us any of our wishes. That's the only reason any of this is moving forward, or otherwise we would have still been hung up in, and going back and forth with the judge and the city, and we would not have at least a permitting process. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is there a long way to go with it? 100%. It'd be interesting to see what the city would be willing to do and hear in the coming months regarding drone operators from the city coming forth and saying, hey, look, we need to do this. This is not working. This has to be done. I remember for those of you who came to the hearing, what was that, when the public hearing to voice the concerns, the drone operators, so that the city could start making arrangements and start to change some of the things that they had initially proposed. I remember, to those of you who were there when we were outside, I told all of you, they will not change a damn thing. Their decision has been made and nothing will be done. And what ended up happening when they finally put out the final rules? It was exactly the same as the initial rules. Nothing was done. Nothing. So what are you holding this hearing for? I'm pretty sure I told you, I'm like, I will give each of you $100, or was it $50 if they change anything. They will not. And I said that based off of my experience having dealt with them, because they make it look like they're coming to the table to act in an amicable manner, like, oh yeah, we want to, but they're not. They are not. They did not want this then. They do not want this now. Which leads me to know that, and to be able to tell you guys that for anything that needs to be fought with the city, it now has to be done with money and with numbers. Going to council members and this will do nothing. And I don't want for that to be the case. I really wish that wasn't the case, because we pay taxes here. They should be listening to us. We are the population here that uses this technology, and we use it for the betterment of the city, right? We use it for facade inspection. We use it for being able to make movies and commercials. And the city already has a huge helicopter problem, and this presents a very elegant solution. Helicopters are, by the way, drones would never take over what helicopters are doing. It's just right tool for the right job. That's all it means. So I would like to take this opportunity to let you guys know that after everything that we have done, I'm not fully happy with what is going on with the city with their terms and the 14-day turnaround and this, and we have yelled at them as much as we can. The only thing that we could do was establish a permitting process and to overturn that law. That was the goal. What we do after that is the main battle. Now we have all these, that was the main war. Now we have to settle out all these little battles on the sidelines here, right? Now, what can we do to get this a month permitting process? It takes a month. What can we do for the pricing of it? What can we do regarding taking off from private property? There's a lot of different concerns that we have. And one of the other ones, of course, is not receiving the permit until 48 hours before. So if you're on a production, you cannot tell the producers and the location managers, I'm not going to have a permit for what I need to do for you guys on this multi-million-dollar film until 48 hours before. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if that permit is going to come back approved or denied. And if it does, oh yeah, there's an appeal process, but if the permitting process takes 30 days, the initial one anyway, up down to 14 days, the appeal process is going to take another 2 weeks. And by then we're already outside of our window for being able to do what we need to do. So clearly there's a lot of problems with the system, and it's meant to be like that to discourage people from being able to file. But
Correct.
The problem, of course, is that what it breeds is it's going to start making a lot of illegal flights in the city. Well, we can't because they won't answer our emails. This is a very convoluted process. It just takes too long. I'm just going to go out there. But of course we don't want that. I don't want, because that essentially what that'll do is give fuel for their fire of saying, no, there's too many people breaking the law. We need to stop this right away. Of course, that's not what we want, but bringing them to the table is a problem. So I'd like to take this opportunity to announce that we are, and I had mentioned this to Jonathan a few weeks ago, that we are putting together a New York City Drone Coalition aimed towards fighting a lot of these unreasonable means of having to pull a drone permit, which is completely not in line with what the rest of the country is doing. And for those of you who have flown in, like, let's say Philadelphia, LA, Miami, Dallas, Oklahoma, where I'm at right now, it is by no means anything like what's going on in New York City. It's as if they just are trying to prevent anyone from being able to do that.
That's a lot. And
That brings me till today. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a bunch of questions. I'm sorry, I know that was long-winded.
no, that was
I'm trying to
excellent.
fit in a lot into a small space here.
It was excellent. This is actually what I really wanted you to cover, because we know there's a problem in New York. And yeah, we were all at that meeting, and we saw what they handed to us. And yes, I think it was 100, you said? I think it
It
was
was $100, wasn't it?
I think it was $100.
Who owes me money here? Who owes me money?
So, and what I was going to hope, hearing from you, that it got a little easier, since they know you're a working entity and they can trust you as a pilot. So even though you're a trusted pilot and you have a track record, what I'm learning now, it seems, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And for us to be calling in favors of this and that, like, we shouldn't have to do that. A permitting process in many of the other cities it's a 2, 3, 4, 5 day process max. Like that makes sense. Like that makes sense. 2 weeks is completely unreasonable. And when we told the judge that, when we sat down with them, they're like, "Oh, guys, this is not a judge that has any idea how video production works, how live TV works, how any of this stuff works. And we told him, like, look, Hollywood has been able to expand. All the companies that used to be in New York have now gone out west. Like, we've lost a lot of talent, we've lost a lot of money, we've lost a lot of movies that have wanted to come to New York. All the talent has gone out west. And we told this to the judge, and we said, hey, look, like 2 weeks really doesn't work. Like, this has to be come down to like 4 or 5 days max. Like, oh, this isn't Hollywood. This is New York City. We're completely different. I'm like, I shouldn't have to explain to you that New York City is one of the most shot cities in the world. What are you talking about? Like, at any given time, there's like 10 programs that are being filmed in New York, like Blue Bloods, all sorts of stuff. Like, anyway, it didn't matter. She didn't care, and we had to agree to that to be able to at least bring a permitting process. And the way I figured it out is, hey, look, we'll agree to this nonsense now, but we're going to come at you. This is round one of multiple rounds that are going to end up coming at you, and you know, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty because there is no diplomatic means of getting these people to realize that what they've got going on is not going to work, and the only way to do it is to take them to court. I don't want to, but oops.
No, New York City Drone Coalition on its way.
Yeah, so we're one of the main things that some of the things that we're going to be fighting for is to obviously reduce that amount of time, is to also have some sort of a trusted network within New York City, so that in the event that any of you that are here that are commercial drone operators in New York City get contacted also by a news network for breaking news. Obviously, the 2-week rule cannot apply. Even if they brought it down to 4 or 5 days, that does not apply. And using drones for news gathering purposes is something that's very important. Jonathan knows, John, you know, Mr. Atkin knows, you know as well. That's something that needs to be done in a matter of 2-3 hours, where there's a process that it essentially becomes a means of just telling the NYPD, hey, look, this is me, this is my drone, I'm going to be here between this time and this time. Not for a permitting process. I'm working for a network or a syndicate, and I've been hired to do just that. You guys do not allow for us do not have enough time for us to get a permit. So this is me just letting you know.
That's what I do.
The New York City Drone Coalition, what I'll do is before all of this is over with, I'll drop the link into it. We are at this point, we need numbers. We literally just put it up today. We will represent New York City drone operators that have been stopped by the law, even if you were operating lawfully with a permit, including New York City permit. If you are denied your permit for unjust reasons, we will help fight that, and of course to overturn a lot of this stuff that all of us are complaining about regarding drone permitting in New York City. That is our goal.
Okay. Jennifer?
So I'm in marketing, and so you have to forgive me. I'm thinking of a spin, and I don't have the resources to do this, but I'm wondering if there's a way to have a map of all the policies in New York State. And what I know is that people really care about job growth, and that if we can tell a story about job growth and get the colleges on board, that is something that makes sense. Or if we lost a certain amount of money because of a movie, we almost have to say this much GDP loss that I think as much as I know you're exhausted, I'm exhausted just listening to you. I'm thrilled that, I don't want to say that this isn't a heavy lift. I want to acknowledge that you're such a learner, and that through your relationship building, you obviously have created many, many bridges and continue to be on the verge of tomorrow. Right. So that's, I think, I'm a conflict averse person, and I'm always trying to think, where's the middle road? And if in fact you can find out how to get quantifiable numbers of job growth, and if you can actually do some sort of GDP formula you can talk in their language. Their language is in GDP, their language is in jobs. They are not educated in this space and they feel like idiots. And so the hardest thing for someone to be collaborative is if they feel stupid. So I think that whether we can get students involved or whatever, is that I think there's a heavy lift on educating how to communicate with them in their language around their constituency and how to stay elected. I'll be quiet now and thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Actually, that's a very good point. We did do that. We took examples of the growth out on the West Coast, because California, it does fan that flame of using UAVs for commercial use, and they have been for 10, 15 years at this point. It has created a tremendous amount of economic growth for their economy, jobs. A lot of the startups for drone companies go there. The only place that they can hang around in New York is when they go up to Griffiths Air Force Base up there, because that's where they're allowed to operate from, and there's a lot of incentive for them to go there. But New York City being a hub of technology and media and marketing and fashion and real estate and all sorts of stuff, we presented to them we presented to them graphs, we presented to them all sorts of stuff, and it was a hard no. They were all hiding behind that law that was written in 1940s to stop it. And this is likely from, NYPD, and this has nothing to do with the officers themselves. This is from leadership. That's all it is.
Ed, let me just say, having been involved extensively in fighting and working with a number of nonprofits in the maritime world, as well as not nonprofits, the scenario that you've talked about of the powers that be saying, oh, it's very nice and blah, 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 and giving you statements that have no promises, or they make promises and they don't follow through. That has been exactly the same pattern of the New York City Economic Development Corporation. And it is ingrained in the entire city. And unfortunately, they don't care about any numbers, any graphs, any GDP. They have their agenda, and that way they will tell you until the sheep die coming home that they want to have community input. They want to hear what you're talking about, yada, 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 yada. But they have their agenda, and that's all they care about. And none of the people who work for the EDC, New York City Economic Development Corporation, or any of their subsidiaries, they just did a whole big land swap. And EDC is not controlling most of the Brooklyn waterfront. And everybody, Eric Adams, saying, oh, this is really good for Red Hook and this, that, and the other. Yeah. Anyway, the point is, you went to loggerheads with the exact same thing that the whole city just unfortunately gets paralyzed by.
No.
I don't know whether you had a direct relationship with the EDC, but they are the most non-accountable, semi-quasi-government agency that has no oversight and no accountability and no budget.
Those words don't surprise me, Mr. Atkin. Those words don't surprise me one bit.
Yeah, and everybody just kowtows to that same aesthetic. I mean, I know Carlos Menchaca, when he was a councilman, he was able to get some things for an organization I'm involved with in small potato stuff, but it's just constant promises over 10 years with several of the agencies I'm involved with, and always breaking the promises. So
that was literally what I said before we sued the city. I looked at Pablo like, it's been 10 years.
Right.
No one has done anything. We are exactly where we were 10 years ago. Either I throw a monkey wrench in this situation and we get some change here, or we could go another 10 years and hope for the best. I looked at the 10 years behind us and there was nothing. So I was like, let's monkey wrench.
And I feel your pain. I understand it fully, because there's all these Venn diagrams of these processes that development has to go through. That's just, Let
me put this out there.
Wait, John, can I say something? John, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Military, 28 years, Corps of Engineers, 24 years, emergency management, teaching them the drones and stuff like that. I'm also a professor, right? As he mentioned, and I have a lot of graduate students who work for the city as well as for the state. And you know what they told me? They told me that they created the process, and maybe it was based on your lawsuit, created the process for the mechanism, but then they created the slow walk. The slow walk is the obstacles that we have to go through in regards to the community boards, for and where you're going to fly and all these other things. So it is an uphill battle that I was told in regards to what's going to take place. So I was told about this already in regards to, so everything that you mentioned, believe it or not, was everything that this individual was telling me about. They put the stuff in place so everybody will be happy, but then they made sure that they slow walked it, that it was extremely hard. The money was extremely expensive. The obstacles that they had to put in for the application in regards to everything that you mentioned, they talked about in regards to, we put it in place, but we're going to make sure that everyone dies in the vein. And it's the same way that the legal system works. You sue somebody, they wait 10, 15 years, either you die, the witnesses perish, or whatever the case may be. So I
That's
understand.
exactly it.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to say in regards to, and I also went to Queens College also, and also did film.
Yeah.
All right, and I also did SVA short film too. So everything you were
God
saying,
bless.
I said, whoa, this guy's like thing. John, I didn't mean to interrupt, John. I just want to let this
No,
guy.
no, please,
No,
everybody, no worries, no worries.
Scott, you were going to say
what I-
something. You had your hand up before. Sorry.
Yeah, bro, be real quick here. Two quick things. One of the reasons I think I was so excited to bring Ed on here is, to me, the takeaway and the lesson, especially for advocacy here, is there's no one size fits all thing to this. What works in North Dakota doesn't work in New York, and vice versa. And really, credit to you, Ed. And I think a big part of this is you've had experiences where it works. But let's call it the nice way, just talking about your experience, with Vaughn College over in Calvervaux Park and all of that. And, that can be done, right? That's the way we all want to go first. And you've done that, right? I think you and Pablo have probably done it more than almost anyone in New York City. And sometimes that option does not work. So sometimes that option doesn't work. And I've just been very frustrated that organizations will throw the same people, the same bodies, the same thing just over and over in hopes it'll work. And we have to change our strategies. And one of those strategies is mounting a lawsuit. In this case, it was the right strategy, I think, to move the ball forward. So that's my takeaway here for sure. That my lesson as we continue to do advocacy and all that is, I try to make sure that we're not just saying, okay, well, we got a lobbyist in Albany and he's meeting once every month. Great, pat each other on the back where a job is done. It often can take way different strategies to make this work, especially in New York City. And my second one real quick is something I've seen that's different between LA and all that our struggle here is in New York is because we're so big, we have so many different interests happening all at once. We did talk about, okay, partnering with the colleges and stuff like that. And that's great. And we should partner. And that's why the New York City Drone Coalition sounds awesome. But the colleges, colleges are going to want to do what they want to do. They're just going to fight as far as flying on their property and end it there because their job is done. Every time I've worked with a group, that seems to be it. Each group is going to go just as far as their own interests make them, and then they're going to step back because fighting New York City is tough. And that's where I think it's tougher here. The film union in LA, like they kind of have it so easy because you have a single unified industry that makes most of the money. We don't have that in New York. I'm not going to get a stockbroker on Wall Street to help me fight for drone stuff, but he's going to generate an incredible amount of GDP in New York City, so much that they won't care about me. And so that's where I think the lawsuit makes sense, and that's where I think we really do have to team up. And so,
yeah, thank you for mentioning that. The Vaughn College, just a few minutes drive from our office, they have a drone program. I've been over there on panels with Scott and a couple of other people in the community. They have a drone program there. Well, if we hadn't brought this lawsuit, where are those kids that are going through that drone program? Where were they going to go? They're going to have to go out west. They're going to have to go upstate. They can't even stay home because the thing that they went to school for is illegal only in this city and in Washington, D.C. Like, where were they going to go? Now it makes sense. Now you'll start seeing drone programs in a lot of these schools in the inner city. Makes sense.
Ed, let me ask you, did you come up with, or did you have any discussions with the Port Authority in New York, New Jersey? Because they, even before our July meeting last summer, they had no drone policy at all. And I had one of the tenants of the Port Authority hired me to do photographs of container ships at Global Terminal, and which is a tenant of the Port Authority.
Mhm.
Their police stopped me, and I got the CEO of the Global Terminal on the phone, and he said, Jonathan is working for me. You don't have a policy. In 3 days, they had a policy. But the fact is that their policy makes sense, and you can get approval from Port Authority of New York in 3 days or less. But why that isn't transferable to anywhere else? And
Because it's like it's
not.
it's like Mr. Lamboy was mentioning before. Yeah, they'll put the situation in front of you so you think that you can work it and that it works, but they will make sure that every hurdle is accompanied by a grenade behind it, so that by
Yeah.
the time you jump over that hurdle, you just end up going flying and you're in the middle of
Well,
nowhere.
the
And
Port
of course,
Authority
there is
allow
no phone number to call. Of
Right.
course, there isn't anything that it's just a huge disaster, and that's exactly how they want it to stop people from doing that, which is why we put together the New York City Drone Coalition, because something tells me that there's going to be another lawsuit, and at this point, it might just end up being a class action lawsuit, because think about the money and time we have all
It
lost
has to be.
due to their negligence,
Yeah.
due to their illegal enforcement of an illegal law over all of these years. How many companies have left? How many people have been arrested? How many people have had trouble going to sleep at night because some of you, maybe if not all of you, are commercial drone operators. It sucks going out thinking that you might not come home because you might be arrested for doing something in your city that is allowed to be done in all the other cities in the country.
I agree.
That keeps you, for those of you who have families and children and wives, I can only imagine how much that kept you up at night. I still get messages till this day from people who used to live in New York, who went to the West Coast and said, thank you so much for doing this. I feel like I could finally come home and do my work there. I get messages every day like that. Mr. Laddie, you have a question.
Yeah, my question is, are there a lot of illegal drone flights that makes the city decide on the direction that they're taking because they feel they're illegal flights?
Look, the illegal flights were taking place well after the 1940 law was written, which is what the city was hiding behind the entire time. So is that why New York City decided to incorporate drones of that? Maybe, probably, perhaps. I would, if I was part of the NYPD, I'd throw that in there. I'd say, yeah, okay, we're going to hide behind this because we have a lot of drone activity over here. It could very well just be another means of control. You know, I mean, this is the NYPD. We are talking about the largest police force in the entire country that rivals numbers that some armies and countries have. You know, they are now installing a network where they can now access the surveillance camera inside of stores because of all the theft that's going on that's supposed to be happening now as like a beta testing pilot program for the stores. I could see it as them totally wanting to have 100% control over everything and anything that we will allow for them to do unless we challenge them.
Yeah, the PD
Unless we challenge them, they will keep doing that sort of stuff.
The PD now has 85 drones. When they first started out, they had 3.
Yeah. Well, when they first started out, another very good point, and I'm sure you guys have seen another thing, and I don't mean to sidetrack this, but you'll see now that the day that they decided to make the press release about drones being legal in New York City, when they were like, oh yeah, we're gonna embrace this technology. They had Skydio out there, and they had the guys from Skydio out there. It's very interesting because I know for a fact that I trained a lot of these guys, and they all had DJIs. Where did the Skydio situation come from? Why are you using Skydios? It's very interesting because one of the guys that I trained, who used to be the head of that department, went to work for Skydio. And then what did he do? Brought Skydio drones into the NYPD, even though if you were to ask the NYPD members that are flying those drones, which ones would they rather fly, Skydio or DJI, 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you the DJI.
Correct.
So why is Skydio the one that's flying over everybody's neighborhoods when it costs like 10 times more?
Made
So-
in China.
This really opens up.
Welcome
This-
to Dante's Inferno.
This
Yeah.
really opens
That's
up.
why I said I don't mean to take this little turn, but
Right. No. But you see what this does? You see what this does, Ed? It opens up verticals of problems right down the
does.
road. Right. So you got all these verticals that we're controlling from the ground. Now the new one that's coming out is the air taxis, right? So now that's the next big thing to hit us by 2028, according to Joby. So, what I'm wondering, how's that going to be accepted into the market? Will that help us drone pilots from the ground be accepted in the market? Will that help? Will that be a kind of maybe boost for us because people now are starting to get used to drones in the sky sort of thing? Because there is a lot of money going behind that.
Yeah,
Between
there is a
WIS,
lot of money, but trust me, they're not involving you and I. They're involving whatever is coming along with that money.
oh, there's
they're
no
like-
doubt. But
Right.
Right.
You and I are not involved in that plan. The only way we're going to be involved in that plan is if we force the city to involve us in that part of the plan. One of the things that we are working for as part of the New York City Drone Coalition is to create a tax incentive for hiring New York City local drone pilots that are registered here with a workable address from here. Why is that important? Well, that's important because we have been put in such a disadvantage when compared to the rest of the country that companies here in New York City have not been able to create a name for themselves like they have out on the West Coast. We would never be able to compete with things like, I don't know, Drone Dudes or Helinet or Beverly Hills. These guys have been allowed to grow exponentially. And of course, the networks here and the companies here that are going to be coming over here, the video production companies are going to be coming over here, they're going to want guys that they've already been networking with for a long time and they've been able to create that opportunity with, right? That relationship, be able to cultivate that relationship. We have not been able to do that at all. As a matter of fact, to this day, if you were to talk to some of the producers out in California, even the ones here in New York, they still think that drones are still illegal. Every call that we get on, we're like, oh, do we still have to operate illegally? No. There's a permitting process. Oh, okay. But a lot of these major productions, they're calling in the guys out from the West Coast. We always knew that taking the city to court, and if this was going to win, would be a double-edged sword. We knew it because as soon as we open it up, the West Coast is going to come knocking. How do we know that? Because the market's already saturated. There's a bunch of them out there doing that, and good for them. That's great. I love it. That's wonderful. But they're going to come out here because they need more real estate. They need more places to be able to do their work, to expand. Sure. But that's why we need to create a tax incentive. At least we're not denying them the ability to come out here. Of course, do what you need to do. It's a free country. But a tax incentive should be created to hire local drone operators and companies to do that sort of work here to start to level the field a little bit. And hopefully the production companies will adhere to that and say, hey, look, there's a bunch of great talent and capable people out on the East Coast that can do just as good a job as the guys out on the West Coast.
To emphasize that, that was one of the points that you made on that July meeting.
I did.
Very
Do you
clearly.
think that they adopted that? No, because they want for all of us to die. They didn't adopt it. They didn't even care. They didn't listen.
But
Those
you were
guys that
very
were writing stuff
explicit
down,
about-
they were just doodling that they were probably playing tic-tac-toe with each other. Nothing was written down based off of what we
It was
requested and what
just a
we wanted to
show.
say.
It was just a PR show.
The whole thing was a show. The whole thing was a front.
Because I talked with those lawyers, those two women who were in theory the legal team from the PD, and they said, oh, it's just a lot of balls in the air still. That was their comment to me.
Yeah. Oh, call this department, call that person, call that. Nobody ever picks up, nobody ever gets back to you, and that's exactly how they want it. This whole
So-
thing is set up just like that.
And you're right. It's going to take numbers. It's going to take a number of people to really start shouting in unison to get the shake trees. Because now that I also believe some manufacturers that need to shake trees, who make drone parts, who do that, all that, just really
Absolutely,
start.
but they're not going to help us here locally.
No, but what I'm trying to say is that if we don't start attacking these verticals, they're just going to walk all over us. So that coalition, I think, is very important, and it should
Yeah.
build. God bless you that you could make it through this. When are you going to get up and go to California? I hope that never happens. But
Imagine if I would have done that, would we be where we're at now? I don't know. Would somebody else have done
New York
this?
City, no way. No
I don't
freaking way.
know.
I think they called that meeting because of that lawsuit.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did. I mean,
Right.
it's much easier for me to go out to California and do my work there. It is so much easier. I don't
Yeah.
have to deal with all this craziness because it's crazy.
Or Florida. A lot of people went
Or
to Florida.
I could have gone to any of these places, or Atlanta,
Right.
or Atlanta. It's much easier, much easier. Part of one of the things that I really do think that we need to keep in mind here is, is to take a look at all of the strategies and all of the means that have been implemented over the years, and we have to just come to the conclusion and realize that that has not worked. That will, at least not for New York City. Like Scott said, that could work in other places. In New York City, no. Why? Because the agenda has already been formed, and they're going to follow that to the T.
So you need a test. So you need a test case, basically. What you need someone that actually got arrested in regards for flying, actually went through the process, didn't get in an approval.
That's
had
exactly.
to turn around and fly, and then you need a test case, and then that test case becomes the class action.
Yes,
That's
well,
how,
I'm
because
glad
now you
you
throw
said that,
everybody
because
else in
part
it.
of what we've been planning for a very long time is having to present the city with the class action lawsuit based off of their illegal enforcement of that illegal law of they have infringed on our First Amendment right to be able to use this technology for all of these years. They have been found guilty of doing so, and as of right now have not had to pay anything, but they have.
But you need someone to be injured to be able to bring something forward, because if you don't,
we
have
have
jurisdiction. You don't. Okay.
We have.
I'm also
Yes.
a lawyer too, so that's why I'm saying that to you too.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We have, even personally ourselves, one of the things that we are looking forward to, one of the biggest things that we're going to be fighting for is not having to file a permit at all if you are taking off from private property. Because right now, in New York City, the only authority that they have is to grant you the authority to take off and land. Once you're in the air, that's out of their purview. That's none of their damn business.
Correct.
So if I take off from my backyard, New York City cannot tell me I cannot do that. That's my backyard. Or if I take off from a balcony in my home, or from if I want to get crazy and take off from my living room and then fly the drone out the window, I should be able to do that, because you cannot tell me. The only thing that you're regulating is the taking off and the landing. The rest of it is out of your hands.
I'm gonna add to that's
we've
Oyster
had
Bay
them.
saw that.
Huh?
Right to back there. That was a huge thing when John and I went to Oyster Bay and worked with that. They capitulated on that. Exactly. They said, you know what? Makes sense. They had an informed attorney, and that attorney was like, yeah, you know what? At the end of the day, this is all we can do. And if we can say, he was like, we can say everywhere, but then sounds like we're gonna see someone in court. We don't want to a smaller town. They don't want to see someone in court, so they draw that line very clearly in their permit. And that was a big part where we kind of, that was a huge compromise, not compromise. That was a huge point at which we said, you know what, like this permit is going to work. This permit, we can work with this, and that permit still sits there in Oyster Bay, and it's been a relatively, would I prefer there's no permit? Sure, but is that with that clause in there, has that made operating in Oyster Bay easy, economical, and they keep people out of the beaches, which they want? Yeah, it's a pretty good, fair shake for everyone involved.
It works. It works.
And it works. It works in Huntington as well.
Yeah.
Remember, Ed, we took that and we brought it over to Huntington, and Ed was there with a number of pilots, and we sat in front of 300 people and the council.
Now,
it was a very interesting day, and now we have a permit there. Now we can work under those laws.
the last thing I'll say, exactly. Last thing I'll say, the theme of the strategy having to be different. We could go to Huntington and take Oyster Bay, and they would go, yeah, we're the same size town. We're right next to each other. Makes sense, right? And for the most part, Long Island has been like that. Each town has piggybacked off the adjacent one and said, oh, it works for them. The attorneys talk to each other. The towns call each other, and it works. New York City, you could throw every town in New Jersey, every town in Long Island, every town in Connecticut, and they would be like, yeah, we're a different beast. Sorry, that's not going to fly here. They will, we can't do that I'll call it the daisy chain effect that has worked for us with rules across Long Island. that just doesn't work in New York City. They will repel any bit of that. And that's the struggle. That I would love to go to New York and say, look, here are 20 towns that are doing well based on that, based on a fair law. And they just, my experience along with that has been that they don't care. That's not gonna affect it. They
So
don't.
I think the takeaway on this, guys, is that if we're going to want to do any work in New York City, something has to be done. The New York Drone Coalition is, and the person who the face of that is obviously the face that I'm looking at right now. And, I hope you do stay there. We will support you. We do want to be a part of this. And, look, it doesn't mean that, if this doesn't work here, it doesn't mean another city in our state can say the same thing, can also turn it upstate New York and start turning it on us. So, we need to, we need to back you as best as we all can, Ed, and the numbers that we can reach as well, as far as members and non-members. AUVSI, I know there's a number of things that I am asking them to start taking a look at New York City, and New York State. So I'm starting to get their ear to start moving in our direction. So, and this is just numbers. These are just educated numbers. It's education. We need to educate these people, but we have to do it in the way that it's got to make sense for us, and it's got to, and see how far we can get with it. We have to do something. And I
agree.
Look,
I agree.
and in New York, and look, once you please get that out to us. I mean, you have all our emails based
I
on.
I don't know how to put a link in there, but I just put the address to the New York City Drone Coalition website. Feel free to sign up there. We are
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that needs to be done in New York City. We no longer have time. We have spent too much time and nothing was done. It took me a while to realize, to adjust our strategy on what we're doing to get the drone laws changed. And once I realized that the city is not on our side and they are not our friend in this situation, then my strategy changed and results were delivered. We did not, I promise you, we did not want to go this route. We did not want to go this route. And I would really, really hope that we don't have to go the route that I think that we're going to have to go in. I really, really hope we don't have to, but I bet you all $100. We will.
When will that site be up? Because I just tried it now. I made a
New York City Drone Coalition. I just looked at it. It's up.
Why is this not going? Drone Coalition.
Somebody put a number 6 in the I don't know, it was at Mr. Atkins put, or somebody said look forward to joining, and they put coalitions and there's 6 in there. And
no,
then
if you just, it's www.
No, it's www.
Yeah, I see it now. I see it.
You do see it. I don't know why I'm not seeing it. Okay, as long as
There you
as long as
go.
you guys can see it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
the thing, I work with a lot of students, and I think what I love about your talk is how you immediately created value for someone that ended up being kind of a lifetime of adventure and also new opportunities. So I hope, I'd love you to be speaking in front of more students. Just because, I mean, like there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot at stake. I get that, but I just think there's so much inspiration about the way that you made decisions early on before you even knew, like you are just like Jonathan Atkin, award-winning in your capability, but it's really because you wanted to be the best and you wanted to be the first, and you made things happen before there was proof it was valuable. So those are the stories that that are about character. And those are the stories that I think our young people, they need more stories of that. They have that ability to create through seeing something of value. Like you obviously had great, you knew you were a better writer than that guy. So you were able to do that. So I don't want that to be lost in this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I was an adjunct professor at Delphi. I set up their drone program over there, and it was great. It was wonderful being able to sit in front of a class full of students who were bright-eyed and really, you know, ready to take on the world, and to be able to inspire them into getting into this field. And while I was there till this day, a lot of them are doing just that. And I'm still in contact with them, and they shoot me questions from time to time, and I'm happy to be able to say that I'm that they're the ones that can say that that my professor was the one that changed the drone laws in New York City, and this is something that's moving forward. But
Wow.
if nothing else comes from this meeting, it'd be for me to tell you guys that now into this second phase of what we're doing, because phase one of getting that law overturned, that's over, that's now behind us. Now we've got the city on the run. Now we've got the city on the run. And the only way we're going to get to a place where this is usable, where we can move forward with this, where there's going to be a bright future for the students, for ourselves, and for many of the companies that want to come to the city and want to invest and are willing to drop a lot of money and hire a lot of people and make their headquarters here for that, is to get out there and demand what we want in a means where we're going to get action from the city. None of this, oh, we have a meeting with the so-and-so 6 months from now and name up. Now. We've already spent too much time. And we need to make up for that time immediately. All right, that's all I got for you guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to just you have my email, feel free to email me. Thank you so much. Please sign up for the New York City Drone Coalition. We are going to be spearheading everything that I just talked about. And if there's anything that you guys feel like you can contribute, it would be greatly appreciated. Either way, we're going to move forward.
All right. Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
We're with you, brother. We're with you.
Thank you very much. You guys all be well. I look forward to seeing you all in person someday.
Take
Bye-bye.
care of yourself. Bye.